Hey everyone, I'm making this video in response to a question someone had on the Autodesk forum, and that question was, how do you set up set-driven key on a joint chain and still have the freedom to move the control around? And I'll show you how to do that in this video. So let me hit Control N to start a new scene. Let me turn on the grid and create a joint chain. Hold X to grid snap. Alright, now let's turn off the grid, create a locator, pull it out here, and we'll use this for the set driven key. So I'll select all this and lock and hide, and I'll go to edit, add attribute, and I'll add an attribute called curl, and we'll say minimum 0, maximum 1, and we'll use that to drive the set driven key. And I'm going to select the first joint in the chain, right click and hold, and go to select hierarchy, and go to display, transform display, local rotation axis, and that'll show us the orientation of each of these joints. And we want these to be consistent, so all these are fine except this very last one. You see it's flipped around in the Y. So I'll also select that joint, hit Control A to go to Attribute Editor, and zero out the joint orient section. And now you see its orientation matches the same orientation as its parent. So now let's go to Create, or its primitive circle, and go to Option Box, and let's reset the tool. So since X is pointing down our joint chain, we want to set this normal axis to X and hit create, because that way X is pointing out this direction, so when we align it with the joint chain, it'll be oriented in the way we want visually. So let me open the outliner, hold shift and click this box here to extend the hierarchy, and to match the control to the joint, I'm going to select the control, select the joint, hit P to parent it, and zero out the translations and the rotations, and hit Shift P to unparent it. So now we have it in the same position, orientation. That's the joint that's going to be controlling, but you see over here we have values. We have a value in the rotation, which isn't good, because imagine if you're animating, you want to zero out the control, like it's not going to zero out correctly, because right now it has 90 and rotate Y. So to get around that, we create a node that's in the exact same spot at the control and parent the control underneath that node, and that node will inherit the translation and rotation values. So to do that, I'm just going to select control, hit Control D to duplicate, hit the down arrow key on the keyboard to select the shape node, and just delete it. So now we have the control, and we have an empty node that's in the exact same position and rotation as control itself. And we parent the control underneath it, you'll see the control now has 0 in the rotates and translations, but the node above it inherited those values. So now when the animators animate this control, they can always just zero everything out and it'll snap back to where it should. So let me undo this real quick. So I'm going to take this empty node, I'm going to duplicate it one more time, and let me just rename these. And this will be the null node, and this will be underscore SDK. So how we set this up is we'll parent the control underneath the SDK node, and we'll parent the SDK node underneath the null. Because right now the SDK node has rotation values in it, and we want a clean control. We want a clean node that we set up our set-driven key on, just to make things easy. Because yeah, just to make things easier on you. So now I'm going to parent the SDK underneath the null node, and you see it zeroed out all the SDK values, and they're all on the null node now. So I'm going to do this for each of these controls by duplicating. Hold V to snap it to next joint, and I'm going to expand all these, and let's rename. Let's go to modify, search and replace names. I'm going to select the second one and replace circle 1 with circle 2, and hit apply. Rename this circle 3, and name the fourth one to circle 4. And let's replace that, and let's delete off this extra number here. Alright, so now we're going to point, orient, constrain each of these joints to the control. So select the control, select the joint, go constrain. We're going to do a point and orient, and do the same for the rest of them. Select, point, orient, and last one. Alright, so now we want to set up the FK hierarchy because we want this root node, when we rotate it, for all these other controls to follow along with it. So make sure when you do this, you don't select the control itself and then parent that underneath the control, because now you took it out of its hierarchy here with the null node and the SDK node. So what you want to do instead is take the null node of this control and parent it underneath control of the joint above it. So do that for each of these. Take the null node and parent it underneath the control itself of the node above it. So now when we select the root control, it will move the whole chain. We shift click this to expand the whole thing, and we don't need this anymore. So this is what you should have so far. You have control, SDK node above it, and a null node above that. Alright, so now we're going to take this locator and go to key, set driven key, set, and load driver. I'm in the animation menu set, by the way. And we're going to take each of these SDK nodes and load those as the driven. So when this curl is at 0, we want them to be at the default position. So I'll take these, and we want to rotate in the rotate Z. So I'll take rotate Z and curl, hit key. So now when curl is at 1, we want these to rotate and rotate Z. So let's rotate him, hit key. So now close that. So now curl, we can animate the curl. And since the SDK is driving these nodes here above control, it leaves control free to be animated without being, because if you set up the SDK directly on the control, for in this example rotate Z, since rotate Z, as you see on the SDK nodes, has this color on it, it means you can't animate it while the set driven key is also driving it. So to get around that, you set the set driven key up on the node above it, and that leaves the node below it free to animate. And I just want to point out, like in this example, I'm showing you how to set the set driven key, but let's say you want these controls to be driven by anything like expressions or something. You can still do this exact same technique where you take control, you set up some nodes above it that you want to control, and it leaves the control itself free to animate. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.